Have you ever felt like you're running, but going nowhere? Like your days repeat themselves in an endless cycle you can't escape. We call it stress, habit, survival. But maybe it's something deeper, a silent obsession. What if nature could show us what we're truly doing to ourselves? Sometimes, the smallest creature carries the loudest truth. There are moments when a thought refuses to leave. It lingers in the background of the mind, echoing like a song stuck on repeat. It could be a fear, a craving, a guilt, or even just the need to check your phone, again. Obsession and compulsion are often misunderstood as extreme conditions, but in truth, they exist in quieter, subtler ways in almost all of us. You don't need a diagnosis to be trapped in the endless loops of your own mind. Obsession is like a whisper that becomes a chant. Persistent, rhythmic, and impossible to ignore. It's that intrusive worry about locking the door even after you've checked it. The sudden image of something going wrong. The need to make something perfect, not because it will help, but because it has to be. The compulsion is the act that follows. The door gets checked again, the list gets rewritten, the hands get washed one more time. It's not logic driving us. It's the fear of what might happen if we don't comply. These cycles often start small. A student rereads their notes 10 times before a test, just to feel safe. A mother triple-checks the stove every night. A man refreshes his bank app every 15 minutes, chasing control in numbers. In each of these, there is a seed of fear buried deep. Fear of loss. Fear of failure. Fear of being caught off guard. So the mind makes a deal: if I just do this one thing, I'll feel better. But that relief is fleeting. So the loop begins again. Our modern lives have fed this loop with urgency and noise. Social media rewards constant checking. Notifications mimic mini adrenaline spikes. The pressure to perform, be productive, be in control, it's everywhere. And so we become addicted to doing, not being. The moment we stop, we feel anxious. The stillness is unbearable. Something feels wrong, even if we don't know what it is. So we move, think, act, just to silence the discomfort. And in that silence lies the truth. Obsession and compulsion are not about action. They are about fear. They are strategies our brains adopt when we feel powerless or uncertain. Like a child repeating a word for comfort, we repeat thoughts and behaviors to feel like we're doing something. Ironically, the more we try to feel safe, the more we trap ourselves in unsafe patterns. We create prisons of routine, rituals dressed as necessity. But not all compulsions come from fear. Some come from longing. The endless scroll through dating apps. The loop of regret over lost opportunities. The mental replay of conversations we wish had gone differently. Here, the compulsion is emotional, not physical, but just as draining. We become stuck in imaginary worlds, replaying scenes in hopes of rewriting what has already passed. It's important to recognize that these loops don't define us. They are not who we are, they are what we do when we are afraid, overwhelmed, or unsatisfied. And they're more common than we admit. Many people live entire lives running in these loops, chasing approval, repeating mistakes, clinging to past pain. The behavior feels necessary, even sacred. But beneath it all is a quiet question: what am I really trying to fix? Obsession and compulsion aren't always destructive. In some cases, they help us survive. They give structure to chaos, soothe anxiety, offer temporary calm. But when the cycle becomes the center of life, when the ritual matters more than the reason, we lose something vital: freedom. The freedom to act without fear, to think without repetition, to rest without guilt. That is what the loop steals from us. To break free, we must first see the loop. And to see it, we must slow down. That's harder than it sounds. Most people only notice their compulsions when they're forced to stop, after burnout, breakdown, or loss. But awareness doesn't have to come with tragedy. It can start with a moment of pause. One breath. One choice not to follow the urge. It is in those tiny moments that we begin to remember what stillness feels like. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore how a small, seemingly insignificant animal holds a mirror to these very human loops. The hamster, harmless, cute, and frantic, lives in a world of wheels. It runs not towards something, but away from stillness. It moves because stillness feels unsafe. Just like us. But before we dive into the animal world, take a moment now. Ask yourself, what loop am I in? And what would it feel like, to stop running? Imagine a small, furry creature enclosed in a glass cage. It has food, water, bedding, even toys. But there, in the center, is the wheel. A hollow circle. It spins when the hamster runs, and the hamster runs even when there's no destination. It doesn't lead anywhere. There's no prize at the end, no scenery that changes. Just endless motion. This is the hamster's nature, but also, perhaps, our reflection. The hamster is a prey animal, biologically wired for alertness, speed, and escape. In the wild, it spends its waking hours foraging, burrowing, evading predators. It's always doing. Stillness is dangerous, predators appear in silence. So, instinctively, the hamster keeps moving. Even in captivity, stripped of threats, it continues to run. The instinct remains. Safety, in the hamster's world, is not found in stillness, but in motion. Nowhere is this instinct more visibly ritualized than in the wheel. For many hamsters, it becomes an obsession. Hours are spent running nowhere. Some even run to the point of exhaustion or injury. Why? Because movement equals survival, even when the threat is gone. It's not logical. It's primal. And in that primality lies the key to our metaphor. The wheel gives the hamster a sense of purpose, of action, of progress, even when nothing changes. The sound of its tiny feet against the plastic will becomes the background noise of captivity. But to the hamster, it's not captivity. It's ritual. Repetition. Safety. The habit is stronger than reality. This is not unlike humans caught in cycles of compulsive behavior. The difference? We wear suits. We check emails. We scroll feeds. But the wheel spins just the same. There's a curious phenomenon observed by hamster owners and researchers alike, the phantom wheel syndrome. After a wheel is removed from the cage, some hamsters will still perform running motions, circling the same spot as if the wheel remains. The muscle memory is so strong, the loop so embedded, that the behavior persists without the stimulus. It's as if the wheel is no longer external, it lives inside them. This moment is hauntingly symbolic. How many of us keep running even after the job is over, the goal is met, or the threat is gone? We continue out of habit. Out of fear of stopping. The hamster doesn't ask why it runs. It just runs. And in our own way, neither do we. We go through motions, perform tasks, repeat patterns. Long after they serve any meaningful purpose. The wheel lives within us too. What's even more fascinating is that not all hamsters run at the same pace. Some run casually. Others sprint like their life depends on it. A few barely use the wheel at all. This mirrors the human experience of obsession and compulsion. Not everyone is trapped to the same degree. Some live with quiet habits. Others are caught in daily rituals so consuming they forget what stillness feels like. But regardless of intensity, the mechanism is the same, movement without destination. The hamster's body, after weeks of wheel running, begins to change. Its legs grow stronger. Its muscles adapt. But its mind doesn't. Unlike a human runner who trains for a race or a purpose, the hamster does not know it is training. The wheel becomes a mindless pursuit, the instinct to move overrides all else. In this sense, the hamster represents something beautiful and terrifying. Commitment without consciousness. And isn't that what many of us do? Commit our time, energy, lives to motions we never fully question. We work overtime not out of passion, but fear. We organize closets at midnight, not from necessity, but control. We check our locks, phones, inboxes, not because we need to, but because not checking feels unbearable. Like the hamster, we've confused motion with meaning. There is something tragic and poetic in watching a hamster run endlessly on its wheel. It looks so determined. So focused. But it never realizes it's running in place. It can't. That's not how its brain is wired. And perhaps, neither is ours, unless we consciously choose to see the pattern. In its soft body and frantic energy, the hamster becomes more than a pet. It becomes a mirror. It reminds us that instinct, when left unchecked, can become a cage. That safety, when taken too far, becomes obsession. And that sometimes, the hardest thing in the world is not to run, but to stop, even when everything inside you screams to move. Somewhere, in a brightly lit office, a man refreshes his inbox for the 20th time in an hour. In another part of town, a young woman checks the stove knob for the 5th time before leaving the house. A student reopens their study planner, though they know the schedule by heart. None of these acts are necessary. None bring new results. But they bring relief, for a moment. Then the cycle repeats. And repeats. And repeats. Just like the hamster in its wheel. The connection is not symbolic. It's structural. The wheel in the cage, the wheel in the mind. Our behaviors, like the hamster's, are often driven not by logic, but by instinct. By the need to do something, anything, to soothe discomfort, fear, or the unbearable feeling of uncertainty. While the hamster runs from imaginary predators, we run from the silence of our own thoughts, from the anxiety of not knowing, from the terror of losing control. The source changes. The motion does not. Both the hamster and the human experience this, when stillness feels like danger. In both creatures, repetition creates safety. Routine becomes armor. But here's the painful truth, it also becomes a prison. The hamster runs because instinct tells it that movement equals safety. Humans do the same, only with added complexity. A man obsessed with cleaning may not fear germs as much as he fears losing a sense of control. A woman who can't stop checking her phone may not be seeking information, but reassurance. The human version of the wheel is invisible, but no less confining. And we build it ourselves. Compulsive behaviors, much like the hamster's running, are not about reaching a destination. They're about avoiding a feeling. That's the key. The hamster isn't trying to arrive anywhere. It's trying not to feel vulnerable, exposed, or still. Humans caught in cycles of obsession and compulsion aren't chasing outcomes, they're fleeing discomfort. The act becomes the escape. And yet, these behaviors look like action. A hamster in a wheel looks busy, purposeful. So do we. We tell ourselves we're productive, organized, responsible. But what if the truth is simpler, and darker? What if we're just afraid? What if our rituals are just ways of keeping stillness at bay, like spinning wheels to keep the darkness quiet? There's a silent tragedy in how obsession tricks the human brain. It mimics logic. If I just check one more time, I'll be sure. If I wash my hands again, I'll feel clean. If I answer every email immediately, I won't fall behind. These thoughts seem rational. But they're echoes, loops. Just like the hamster never reaches a finish line, we never reach certainty. The more we repeat, the more the relief shrinks. And still, we keep going. The neurological loops in obsessive-compulsive behaviors are deeply similar to the physical loops of the hamster. In both cases, there's a trigger, anxiety, restlessness. A behavior, running, checking, repeating, and a reward, brief relief. But then the cycle starts over. And over. Until the behavior no longer serves us, it owns us. The mirror becomes clearer here. A hamster doesn't question the wheel, it just runs. Humans, though, have the gift and curse of awareness. We can recognize the pattern. We can name the wheel. But naming it isn't always enough to stop running. Because the fear is still real. The discomfort is still sharp. And often, it's easier to spin in place than to face the terrifying stillness of change. Sometimes, the most courageous thing a person can do is pause, to not repeat the ritual, to resist the instinct, to feel the full weight of the discomfort without numbing it through repetition. That pause is not weakness. It is revolution. In that moment, we are not just breaking a habit. We are stepping off the wheel. But stepping off comes with fear. Just like a hamster hesitates when its wheel is removed, humans resist the silence that follows when the compulsion ends. What do we do with stillness? With the space previously filled by endless doing? That emptiness can feel unbearable at first, but it is also where freedom begins. The connection between human and animal is not only metaphorical, it's neurological, emotional, and instinctual. When we look at the hamster, we see more than an animal in motion. We see ourselves, caught between instinct and intention, between fear and freedom. And yet, this connection is not a curse. It's an invitation. To observe. To question. To pause. The wheel doesn't define us, unless we let it. Why does the hamster run? Why does the human check, clean, repeat? It starts deep in the brain, in both species. At the heart of this compulsive dance lies an ancient mechanism designed to keep us alive, the fight-or-flight response. But what happens when the threat isn't real, or never goes away? For the hamster, the running instinct may be rooted in a simple biological urge, to stay active, to release stress, to mimic escape. In the wild, hamsters must run. From predators, for food, for survival. Though domesticated hamsters are no longer under threat, their brains don't know that. The instinct remains. The wheel becomes the jungle. The motion becomes protection. For humans, the root is more complex, but just as primal. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in our brain, processes fear and threat. When it detects danger, real or imagined, it sends a signal to activate our stress response. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, attention narrows. It's an ancient system, but it doesn't discriminate between a tiger in the wild and a fear of contamination, failure, or rejection. Now here's where things get even more interesting. In people with obsessive-compulsive tendencies, this system gets stuck in overdrive. The brain sends out a warning, something's wrong, and the person performs a behavior to neutralize the threat. That behavior works, momentarily. The brain calms down. But then the warning flares up again. And the person must repeat the ritual. Again. And again. Like the hamster, they run, not to get somewhere, but to make the fear stop. Scientific studies have identified that in people with OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, certain brain circuits are overactive. Particularly, the orbitofrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and basal ganglia play key roles. These areas are involved in decision-making, emotional regulation, and habit formation. When their signals are misfiring, the brain becomes a trap, urging action, then questioning it, then urging it again. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off every time someone boils water. You know it's not a fire. But you still run to check the stove. Just in case. But it's not only about fear, it's about relief. The brain is wired to reward repetitive behavior that reduces anxiety, even if temporarily. Dopamine, the chemical messenger of pleasure and motivation, plays a tricky role here. When a compulsive act reduces discomfort, dopamine reinforces it. The brain says, "Ah, that worked, do it again." And so begins the loop. Not because it's logical, but because it's reinforced. And animals are not immune to this cycle either. Experiments with hamsters, mice, and even dogs show that repetitive behavior increases under stress, boredom, or lack of stimulation. Hamsters with limited space or unpredictable environments tend to run more excessively, and sometimes develop signs of what researchers call stereotypy, meaningless repetition. Sound familiar? The scientific term, stereotypic behavior, refers to repetitive, functionless acts observed in animals under stress or in captivity. Think pacing tigers in zoos. Or hamsters running for hours with no destination. The cause? Frustration, anxiety, or an inability to perform natural behaviors. In humans, the parallel is uncanny. Compulsions can feel like a substitute for control, a desperate outlet when real solutions are out of reach. The bridge between human and animal is more than metaphor, it's neurological. And it goes even deeper. Research in evolutionary psychology suggests that obsessive patterns may have evolved as protective traits. In uncertain environments, being extra cautious, double-checking food, cleaning obsessively, planning redundantly, may have increased survival odds. In the past, such behaviors were adaptive. In modern life, they can become debilitating. What once helped us survive now traps us. But understanding this is not about blame, it's about compassion. The hamster isn't crazy. It's reacting to invisible cues with the tools evolution gave it. So are we. When we obsess, when we repeat, when we spiral, we're not broken. We're responding to ancient signals with a brain that's trying its best to protect us. The good news is, the brain can change. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, means we're not doomed to stay on the wheel forever. With awareness, therapy, and even practices like mindfulness, people can learn to notice the pattern without obeying it. They can step back from the alarm without rushing to silence it. They can pause before the wheel starts spinning again. And as for the hamster, it may never understand the wheel isn't a forest trail. But we can. We can learn that not every urge must be obeyed. Not every thought is a truth. Not every fear is a command. And in that awareness lies power, the power to slow down, to question, to gently step off the wheel. Because the mind is not a cage. And we are not just instincts in motion. In a dim kitchen at 3 a.m., Laura scrubs the same countertop for the 4th time. Her hands are raw from bleach, her eyes red from exhaustion, but her mind whispers, one more time, just to be sure. She knows it's clean. She knew it 2 hours ago. Yet the thought of invisible germs still gnaws at her. Her husband, asleep in the next room, doesn't know she's been up all night circling the same small space. It's not about the mess. It's about the what if. The wheel turns. A few miles away, Daniel, a young accountant, checks his front door. Is it locked? He turns the knob. Yes. He walks away. Then stops. What if it wasn't locked properly? Back he goes. Click. Locked. He walks away. Then back again. 3 times. 6. 12. He knows it's irrational. But his brain won't let him leave. He's late for work again, stuck in a ritual that has no finish line. He isn't seeking reassurance. He's trying to quiet a scream only he can hear. In the suburbs, a teenage girl named Maya has a different ritual. Every night, before bed, she must align every object in her room perfectly. Books equidistant. Pens in color order. Curtains symmetrical. If a pencil is crooked, she can't sleep. If her routine is interrupted, she feels a crushing weight in her chest, like something terrible will happen. She doesn't know what. Only that the feeling won't stop unless everything is just right. Like the hamster, she runs. Not from danger, but from disorder. And sometimes, the wheel isn't visible from the outside. Take Nathan, a father of 2. On the surface, he's calm, reliable. But inside, his mind loops endlessly. He mentally rehearses conversations from years ago. He checks his emails 5 times before hitting send. He repeats certain phrases silently in his head to neutralize thoughts he can't control. He smiles through it. No one knows his mind is spinning at full speed. Caught in a private loop of doubt and self-correction. The cage isn't always physical. But the wheel is always spinning. Let's go back to the hamster for a moment. In a small cage lined with wood shavings, a golden hamster runs. The wheel squeaks rhythmically. She runs at night, mostly, for hours. She doesn't get anywhere. There's no prize at the end. Just the comfort of motion. Scientists have tried removing the wheel, thinking it was causing stress. But the hamster became more anxious. Agitated. Restless. So they put it back. It's not the wheel itself that's harmful. It's when it becomes the only way to feel safe. Now, zoom out again, into a corporate office. Carla, a marketing executive, obsessively reviews her reports. She double-checks every number. Triple-checks formatting. She won't submit anything unless it's flawless. Her co-workers admire her perfectionism. But they don't see the panic attacks in the bathroom. The crying in her car. The feeling that if she makes one mistake, her entire career will collapse. She isn't proud of her perfectionism, she's a hostage to it. We often reward these behaviors socially. We call them dedication, meticulousness, cleanliness. But we rarely ask, at what cost? Then there's Theo, a man who silently counts everything. Steps between cracks in the sidewalk. Number of bites he takes. Times he taps his fingers before turning off a light. He doesn't know why. It just feels necessary. He's aware it looks strange, so he hides it. But each act feels like a protective shield against a vague, nameless doom. He doesn't believe it will really keep him safe, but not doing it feels far worse. Every loop brings relief. Until the next one begins. Finally, let's revisit Laura, the woman in the kitchen. The sun is rising. The counters are shining. Her hands are trembling. She sits on the floor, exhausted. For a moment, she cries, not from sadness, but from release. The need to clean has passed. For now. But she knows it will return. Like a tide. Like a shadow. Like a wheel. The common thread in all these stories isn't dirt, or order, or numbers. It's the relentless attempt to control what feels uncontrollable, thoughts, feelings, fears. It's a coping mechanism dressed as logic. And like the hamster in its wheel, humans often chase comfort in loops. Not because they want to, but because, for a moment, it feels like escape. But as these stories reveal, the will doesn't take us away. It just keeps us moving in place, dizzy, exhausted, but unable to stop. These are not rare cases. They're reflections of a silent epidemic. One that hides behind closed doors, polished surfaces, and quiet minds in chaos. Understanding these real examples isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. Because when we see ourselves in them, even just a little, we begin to understand our own loops. Our own wheels. And we start to wonder, what would it mean to pause? To step off, even briefly? To believe that safety can come without repetition? Maybe the first step toward freedom is not stopping the wheel, but noticing that we're on it. There is something quietly tragic, and profoundly human, about running in circles. About chasing a sense of certainty we never truly catch. About repeating actions not because they bring joy, but because they stave off fear. And in this endless motion, we begin to forget something vital: we were not born to live in a wheel. What if we paused? Not forever. Not dramatically. But just long enough to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? What am I running from? What am I trying to control? These are not easy questions. In fact, they're some of the hardest. But in their asking, something powerful awakens, the possibility of awareness. Because obsession and compulsion are not about weakness. They are about survival. They are the mind's way of building safety nets when the world feels too chaotic, too uncertain, too dangerous. The hamster doesn't run because it's foolish. It runs because it needs to. So do we. But humans have something the hamster does not, self-reflection. And that is where change begins. When we recognize that our emotional wheel is spinning, whether through compulsive checking, cleaning, planning, perfecting, or even people-pleasing, we reclaim the first piece of power. We name the loop. And once something has a name, it can be understood. Once it's understood, it can be softened. Once it's softened, it can be changed. Consider this: not every thought is true. Not every feeling requires action. Not every fear is a command. The compulsive mind often confuses discomfort with danger, and relief with safety. So it runs. Again and again. And the more we obey, the more powerful the loop becomes. But awareness interrupts the cycle. Awareness says, I see you, fear, but I don't have to follow you today. Stepping off the wheel isn't a one-time act. It's a daily, conscious practice. It's breathing through discomfort instead of reacting. It's tolerating imperfection. It's learning to sit with uncertainty. Not because it feels good, but because it builds emotional muscle. This is not about eliminating the wheel forever. Sometimes, we'll find ourselves back on it. That's okay. Compassion is part of the process. The goal is not to become perfectly still, the goal is to become aware of when we are moving in loops that no longer serve us. From the hamster, we learn instinct. We learn that when we feel trapped, we look for movement. We seek rhythm, repetition, something predictable. But we are not confined to instinct alone. We can question our loops. We can rewrite our rituals. We can redefine what safety means. Real freedom isn't found in control. It's found in trust. Trusting that not every bad thought is a prophecy. Trusting that we can survive discomfort. Trusting that we are not our fears. In therapy, there is a phrase often used when treating obsessive-compulsive behaviors: lean into the uncertainty. At first, it sounds like madness. But in time, it becomes liberation. Because leaning into uncertainty is not surrender, it's strength. It's saying, I don't need to know everything to be okay. I don't need to fix everything to feel safe. Imagine a life where you don't have to check the door 10 times. Where a dirty dish doesn't steal your peace. Where you can make a mistake and still feel worthy. That life is possible. But it begins not with action, it begins with compassion. Be gentle with yourself. You're not broken. You're coping. And coping is a skill, one that can evolve. So the next time you find yourself repeating, rechecking, revisiting, ask, what am I really seeking? Often, the answer is peace. Reassurance. Safety. And those things can be found, not in the ritual, but in the stillness beneath it. The hamster may always need its wheel. But you are capable of stepping off. Even if just for a moment. And maybe, in that quiet pause, you'll discover something radical. You were never meant to live in the loop. You were meant to live free.